So welcome to Jumbo IS and welcome to our lecture series called Daily News in Shorts. In this lecture series, we cover a particular day's current affairs in a short span of time. Now, needless to say this, you have to revise this lecture just after watching it. Because just after watching it, if you do not revise this lecture, then all these current affairs would quickly skip your memory. You won't be able to retain them. So it is pertinent for you to revise these current affairs from the notes provided by us on our Telegram channel. The link to our Telegram channel is provided in the comment section below. So do check that out. Revision is extremely important. Alright then, let's begin today's session. But first, let's take a look at the list of topics that we shall cover today. So let's begin. So daily current affairs, 21st of November, Friday, and here is the topics list. So number one topic is with respect to Supreme Court's verdict on presidential reference. You must have known the background of a recent Supreme Court judgment on Tamil Nadu governor case. Well, the president seeked Supreme Court's advisory opinion on that previous judgment. And in that advisory opinion, Supreme Court overturned its previous judgment. So we will talk about the entirety of this issue. What is this all about? Because this is an important judgment with respect to powers of governor and president. So we'll talk about this. Then, second topic is related to third phase of CAFE rules. Well, CAFE rules were released by government to make auto car manufacturers to upgrade their engines for better fuel efficiency so that less greenhouse gas emissions can be undertaken. Now, there have been some new developments with respect to these CAFE rules. We'll talk about this. Then, a volcanic mountain in Indonesia, Mount Semeru, after Mount Semeru in Indian mythology. Well, it erupted. So we will talk about volcanic eruptions and what decides how strong the volcanic eruption would be. Okay. And the last topic is related to removal of ORS-labelled beverages that are being sold in the market. And this order was given by FSSAI. Okay. So the first topic is related to polity portion of your UPSC syllabus. The second topic is related to policy and governance, but majorly environment portion of your UPSC syllabus. The third topic is related to, again, environment, geography, and the last topic is related to, well, science and technology because it talks about health. Okay, so these are the four topics that we shall discuss. Let's discuss them one by one, starting with topic number one, and that is Supreme Court's verdict on presidential reference. Now, listen to me very carefully. You see, the thing is that, well, back in the day, in around April, what happened was that Tamil Nadu governor, which was appointed by a central government, was not having a very good relationship with Tamil Nadu government, state government. And that is why the bills passed by Tamil Nadu Legislative Assembly were kept pending by Tamil Nadu governor. He actually was delaying it. So Tamil Nadu state government went to the Supreme Court. A two-judge bench was hearing that case, and that two-judge bench basically gave a verdict. It said that all these bills that have been left pending by governor have been deemed to be given the assent of the governor. They have been deemed to be passed. Without actually receiving the signature of the governor, Supreme Court said, well, your signatures have been deemed. Okay, we are assuming, and the bills are getting passed. Now that really angered the governor. Plus, the Supreme Court also said that from next time onwards, governor cannot keep these bills pending. Okay, Supreme Court gave certain timelines that within 1 month you have to do this, within 3 months you have to do this. Now all of this was done, but the central government, which appoints the governor, and the governor were not happy with this judgment. Why? Well, simply put, they say that the constitution makers or the constitution has not given any of these timelines. And the constitution is very clear that a bill will become a law only when the governor gives his assent. So how can Supreme Court do this? How can Supreme Court give timelines where the constitution is silent? How can Supreme Court deem to have given the assent to bills? How can Supreme Court do this? So the President of India, using her power under Article 143, basically asked advisory opinion of the Supreme Court on whether this should be allowed or not. And recently Supreme Court gave its judgment, its advisory opinion. And in that advisory opinion, Supreme Court said, yes, our previous judgment was faulty. This is not allowed. Supreme Court can't do this. There is separation of powers in India's constitution. Okay, Parliament has a role, executive has a role, and judiciary has a role. So let's talk about this entire issue. I hope I gave you a brief background and you understood it. Now let's talk about this in detail. Okay, So SC verdict on presidential reference. So what was in the news? Supreme Court rolled back the timelines and directives for the governor and the president by holding the door open for states to move the court against the governor, delaying the legislative process. The apex court seeks to strike a balance in the separation of powers. You know what the Supreme Court has said? Supreme Court has said that the previous bench, the previous judgment was faulty. Okay, Supreme Court should not have interfered within the realm of governor, within the powers of governor. Okay, Supreme Court from now on will not interfere in governor's role. But if the governor is causing undue delay, is not signing the bill, if it is undue, unjustified, then we can intervene in limited capacity. The states can approach the Supreme Court. But the norm is we won't interfere. But if it is excess, then we will interfere in limited capacity. So limited judicial review was allowed. Okay. The apex court set aside an earlier judgment given by a two-judge bench in the state of Tamil Nadu versus the governor of Tamil Nadu. By the way, Supreme Court can cancel its previous judgment if the previous judgment was given by a lower number of judge bench, and the current judgment is given by a higher number of judge bench. Okay, so the current advisory opinion was given by a 5-judge bench. This can overturn a 2-judge bench ruling. Okay, now let's talk about the background. So what happened in April this year? Tamil Nadu government filed a petition in Supreme Court challenging the governor's R.N. Ravi's prolonged and indefinite delay in granting assent to 10 bills passed by the state legislature. So the Supreme Court heard the case, 2-judge bench, and gave its ruling. Invoking special powers under 142. Article 142 gives special powers to the Supreme Court to do complete justice, and using those powers, Supreme Court can interfere in any organ of the government, in legislature, parliament, executive. Using that power, Supreme Court said, if the governor is not giving his assent, we will give the assent ourselves, deemed to have received assent. Plus, it imposed specific timelines for governor and president to act on the bills. Plus, it said that when a bill is presented to the governor, as per Article 200 of the Constitution, the governor can grant his assent, withhold his assent, okay, refer to it to the president, or return. Okay, but it cannot indefinitely hold the bill forever. This was said. Clear? Now, this judgment was overturned. So what does the Supreme Court say now? Well, now the Supreme Court says that governor's options under Article 200 are same only. It can grant his assent, return the bill, refer to it to the president, or withhold his assent, cancel his assent. But he cannot indefinitely delay the bill. Okay, he cannot say, I'm neither giving my assent nor withholding my assent. He has to make up his mind. But the Supreme Court said that we won't interfere because governor has his own mind. We can't interfere. But if governor is doing undue delay, then we will interfere in limited capacity. Governor's discretion. Article 163 says that governor has certain discretionary powers, not bound by the aid and advice of Council of Ministers. That holds. Justiciability of governor's discretion. You can't always go to the Supreme Court that, no, I'm questioning the decision of the governor. No. Article 361 gives immunity to President of India. Remember this. And the governor. President of India and the governor to never appear before the court. So you can't drag governor or president in court using this. They have the immunity. Plus president's power under Article 201. You know, if there are state bills, the governor can reserve some state bills, some, for the consideration of the president. Now, what can the president do if certain state bills are reserved for his consideration? Those options are given in Article 201. The Supreme Court says that president is free to choose any option. We won't interfere in that. Plus, this Article 142, which gives Supreme Court extraordinary powers to intervene in anything. Well, Supreme Court says that we will put a limit to it. Supreme Court, because India follows doctrine of separation of powers. Every organ of the government, legislature, executive and judiciary, have their own sphere of dominance. No one can interfere in the other. Okay, so separation of powers is maintained. So through this judgment, Supreme Court is trying to strike a balance between unjustified behavior of the governor. But if governor's behavior is unjustified, that doesn't give the license to the Supreme Court to intervene. So, intervention of Supreme Court, unjustified behavior of the governor. The Supreme Court this time has tried to strike a balance, follow the middle path through this judgment. Okay, I hope you understood this. All right then. Now let's move on to second news item, and that is third phase of CAFE rules. Okay. Now what are CAFE rules? Basically in 2017, Government of India launched these environmental rules called CAFE rules. You see, greenhouse gas emissions is a problem. We all know it. And there are many sources of greenhouse gas emissions. We all know about it. One such source is vehicular emissions. Your cars, your public transport vehicles, they emit greenhouse gases. Now, the amount of greenhouse gas emissions by these cars can be reduced if the engines are modified in a way that gives more fuel efficiency. With little petrol or diesel, mileage increases. Okay, so less greenhouse gas emissions take place. So in 2017, Government of India launched CAFE rules. Under this, in a phased manner, okay, all these car manufacturers have to upgrade their cars so as to increase fuel efficiency. These CAFE rules would be implemented in 3 phases, and with every phase, the targets of reducing greenhouse gas emissions through engine modifications becomes more aggressive. Make sense? Now the third phase is about to begin. And the third phase, has certain issues and many car manufacturers are complaining. So in this news item, we will talk about CAFE rules first, and then we'll talk about the issues or the problems in the third phase of CAFE rules. Okay, so let's begin. So third phase of CAFE rules. So what was in the news? So India plans to tighten fuel efficiency norms under Corporate Average Fuel Efficiency, CAFE, phase 3, which will start from financial year 2028, that is 2027-28 till 2031-32. Okay, so more aggressive targets would be given in this third phase. The norms follow a weight-based formula that tightens gradually over the years. Okay, now what were the 3 phases? Phase 1, 17 to 22, phase 2, 22 to 27, phase 3, 27 to 32. Okay, now about these corporate average fuel efficiency norms, so details about them. So these norms are government regulations that set fleet-wide average fuel efficiency. Fleet means car fleet. And CO2 emission targets for automakers, automobile manufacturers. They were introduced in 2017. The primary objective are to lower oil dependency, because if fuel efficiency increases, that means with less petrol, you can travel farther distances. So there will be less demand for petrol and diesel, less demand for crude oil. India's import bill will also be saved. Yes? Reduce air pollution, because less petrol will be burnt, and promote more fuel efficient vehicles and technologies like EVs and hybrid, which run on petrol as well as electric. Now, these norms apply to passenger vehicles, including those that run on petrol, diesel, LPG, CNG, hybrid EVs. If the auto manufacturer does not follow these norms, there is a penalty. Okay? So, automakers who fail to meet the targets face penalties under Energy Conservation Act. Now, the third phase is about to begin, and car makers are complaining. Why are they complaining? What's so problematic about third phase of these CAFE rules? Let's talk about this. The issues. Under these new CAFE rules, the government has made a differentiation between small cars and large cars. And the problem is, small cars have more aggressive targets. They have to reduce greenhouse gas emissions more than large cars. So small car manufacturers are complaining about this, that this is unfair. Why aren't similar norms being applied to large car manufacturers, which are being applied to us? Okay, small cars at a disadvantage. So smaller, lighter cars face steeper fuel efficiency improvement targets than heavier cars under this new weight-based formula. Now, this is against international best practices. Similar CAFE rules exist in USA, China, South Korea, Japan, European Union. But in those rules, larger cars have extra targets and smaller cars have some relaxations. In India, it's the opposite. And smaller cars are sold more frequently. Their sales are higher than large cars. So this is a problem for small car manufacturers. That's what they have complained about. Smaller cars have thin profit margins, restricting adoption of costly technologies. Now, to manufacture these cars with upgraded engines, their cost would increase. But small cars have thin margins. I mean, the cost to make them and the selling price, the difference is not that large. If you'll increase the cost price because you have to upgrade engines now, well, the margins, profit margins would further reduce. These companies would be at a loss. Okay. Strict norms risk increasing prices, potentially excluding first-time and budget buyers. People who are first-time buyers, they start with small cars. Now, small cars are also going to become expensive. So they have every reason to complain. Okay. Possibility of market shifting towards bigger and pricier cars. Now, what will happen? Now, most car manufacturers will mostly manufacture bigger cars, which are pricier, costlier. So these budget cars would cease to exist from the market and small car owners would suffer. This is a huge problem. Okay, so details are given in your notes. Do check that out. And now let's shift our focus to third news item, which is eruption in Mount Semeru. Mount Semeru is a volcanic mountain and it is an active volcano which recently erupted, and the eruption was extremely violent. This Mount Semeru is in Indonesia. Now, the purpose of including this news item in today's lecture was the purpose is so that I can make you understand the different types of volcanoes and what decides whether a volcanic activity would be violent or not. Okay, some volcanoes are very silent lava flows, but some are extremely explosive. What decides the explosivity of a volcano? Plus different types of volcanoes. We will study all these things in today's lecture, in this topic. Okay, so this topic is important from the perspective of geography and environment. So pay close attention. All right. So eruption in Mount Semeru. So Mount Semeru, among the most active of Indonesia's 120 live volcanoes. So Indonesia has 120 active volcanoes. Erupted on Wednesday, spewing hot clouds of volcanic ash and debris. Volcanoes erupt because of how heat moves beneath Earth's surface, deep within the planet. It's so hot that rocks slowly melt to become a thick flowing substance of magma. You know what these lavas are? Well, deep inside the earth, well, the temperatures are so high that these rocks melt. Okay, and when these rocks melt, well, they are hot molten rocks. These hot molten rocks are nothing but lava. But when they are deep inside the earth, well, it is called magma. Okay, remember this distinction. Magma, when it comes outside the earth, is known as lava. So magma is extremely hot. And because it is extremely hot, it has a tendency to rise up. Now, sometimes below the soil, there are these chambers where this magma, when rising up, gets filled up. Now, when the chamber is too full of magma, there is high pressure. And when there is high pressure, the magma explodes out of the Earth's surface because it is filling up constantly in that chamber. The chamber does not have the capacity to hold this magma anymore, and then it explodes. That is when it becomes lava, right? So you know how the volcano works, right? So let's talk about this, okay? So this is the picture that will explain all of this in a better way. So these are molten rocks, magma. Some magma collects in this magma chamber. It keeps on collecting. There comes a point when this chamber does not have any more capacity to hold this magma. High pressure is there. So this pressure is released when this explodes. And this molten magma that is coming out is known as lava. All right. Now, what decides the explosivity? Listen to me carefully. Explosivity of a magma or a volcano is a function of composition of magma. Okay. How is this magma? That decides whether it's going to be explosive volcano or a mild volcano. So thin magma, very thin liquid, runny magma allows gases to escape easily, leading to less explosive. That you can see in Hawaii volcanoes, Hawaiian Island in USA. Well, there are many active volcanoes over there, but they are so thin, they are not at all thick, that gases escape and they come out very easily without any explosion or even a sound sometimes. Then, volcanoes which are extremely thick, they trap gases within them, which increases the pressure, and that is why they come out with an explosion. So remember, thin magma, no explosion, thick magma, more explosion. Explosive eruptions produce tephra. Remember this term tephra. Because there is an explosion, so sometimes dust particles and big rocks are also released in the air. This is known as tephra. Remember this term. Okay? Now, volcanoes are generally, there are different types of volcanoes, by the way. Okay? But there are three major types that you should know about. Okay? One is called shield volcano. This shield volcano is the one which generally, through which thin lava comes out, not very explosive. Okay? Shield. It's not that high of a mountain and the lava comes out very quietly. Then this is composite volcano, also known as stratovolcano. It is thick magma, comes out with an explosion, and once magma cools down, it creates a mountain. And then there is caldera. What happens is, in stratovolcano, there is a peak of the mountain. But in caldera, what happens is the explosion is so huge that there is a crater that is formed. This is caldera. Okay. By the way, classification based on activity of volcano is also there. There are some active volcanoes, dormant volcanoes, extinct volcanoes. Active, well, which have erupted recently and is likely to erupt again. Dormant has not erupted in a long time but still has the potential to erupt in future. It is dormant, it is quiet for now. Extinct, it will never erupt again in future. It did erupt in the past but not again. Okay, so these are the three types of volcanoes. All right, and now let's quickly shift our focus to last news item of the day, and that is removal of ORS-labelled beverages. You know what ORS is? You must have seen about this, that in India, well, many children die when they are very young, under 1 year of age or 2 years of age. Many children die because of infection. Because of that infection, they have diarrhea. In that diarrhea, they lose a lot of water from their body, causing dehydration and eventual death. Okay? So, to prevent that death due to dehydration, what happened was that WHO created a formula called oral rehydration salts. When you mix these oral rehydration salts in water, it becomes an ORS solution. So whenever a child is suffering from dehydration and diarrhea, well, that child is given that ORS solution. Simple, yes. So dehydration is reduced, the child's life is saved. This solution was given by WHO and it is branded under WHO ORS. These ORS sachets are available in the market also. Now what happened was that, well, WHO has a proper formulation of ORS. I mean, there are different salts and every salt has a proper composition and, well, proportion in which it would be added to a solution. It is a proper formulation that WHO has created, which is under ORS brand name. Yes. But there are some drinks, beverages like Gatorade and many other drinks, cold drinks that are available in the market, which are branded as health drinks. And in those health drinks, sometimes the manufacturers write that it is same as ORS. Okay, maybe 1 or 2 salts that are found in ORS are also in that Gatorade or in that health drink. But these health drink manufacturers, they brand it as if it is the same ORS as WHO. Now, this is misleading the people. Government said that if your drink does not contain the same ORS that WHO makes, the same formulation, you can't use the name ORS on your beverage. FSSAI, Food Safety and Standards Authority of India, has ordered removal of such drinks from the market. Okay, so this was the issue. So let's talk about this. And in the discussion, we'll also talk about FSSAI. What is FSSAI and what are its functions? Okay, all right. So removal of ORS-labelled beverages. So what was in the news? So Food Safety and Standards Authority of India has ordered removal of fruit beverages, ready-to-serve drinks, electrolyte drinks that falsely use ORS in their brand names. This follows reports of such products being sold despite a ban on using term ORS for products that do not follow WHO recommended ORS formulation. Okay, so what's the background? Actually, what is ORS? I have explained it to you. Oral rehydration salts. ORS is a WHO recommended electrolyte formation medically used to treat dehydration. Okay, so what did FSSAI do? FSSAI banned the use of the term ORS in product names that do not conform to WHO formulation in 2022. Reason was that these misleading products pose public health risks, including worsening dehydration, especially in children. What if a person, when their child is suffering from dehydration, gives them Gatorade? Gatorade is not same as ORS. So that can lead to, well, that is misleading the public and that can have devastating consequences. So that is why it was banned. Now, what is the current situation? Some stores and e-commerce platforms like Amazon or Blinkit, Instamart, they still sell these beverages under ORS. So FSSAI has called for an immediate removal of these beverages. Okay, that was the issue. Now let's quickly talk about FSSAI. How does FSSAI get this authority to order a ban? Okay, Food Safety and Standards Authority of India is a statutory body. That means made under a law of parliament, under Ministry of Health. Which law of parliament? Food Safety and Standards Act. Now, what are the functions of FSSAI? Setting standards and guidelines, regulation and monitoring, licensing and registration, accreditation of laboratories and bodies, enforcement, and many others. So go through these functions one by one. All right, make sense? And that would be all. With that, we conclude today's session. So thank you so much for watching, everyone. And I'm sure it has added value to your preparation. But it will add more value if you're consistent and regular with the lecture series and you revise it from the notes. So please do not forget to do that. And I shall see you next time with another set of news items. Thank you, everyone.